the opposition, under the leadership of Robert Kyagulanyi, aka Bobby Wine, is disorganized, rudderless, weak, hopeless. It is incapable of inspiring many people to show up and vote. It is very, very difficult to predict the future. So I can say that between now and December, many things can happen that can turn the situation around. So I'm going to qualify my predictions by saying, holding all other factors constant. If an election were held today, one, there is extensive voter apathy. I believe that the voter turnout would fall to maybe 40%. For the following reasons. One, the opposition, under the leadership of Robert Kyagulanyi, aka Bobby Wine, is disorganized, rudderless, weak, hopeless. It is incapable of inspiring many people to show up and vote. It is locked up in an echo chamber where the most enthusiastic components of the opposition think, in that small echo chamber where they think that everybody agrees with them. What they don't not understand that while it is true that the vast majority of Ugandans, maybe 65% or 70% of the population of Uganda, are disenchanted with Museveni, that does not necessarily mean that they support the opposition. It's like, you see, my grandson here, Robert Kanusu, assuming he had a very pretty wife and they fell apart because he was cheating on her or abusing her, it is not automatic, Timothy, that she will fall in love with you. The fact that they are angry, she's angry with him, does not necessarily mean that she's going to be in love with you. Sarah Birete, would you agree? No.
Quite an interesting analogy.
You see, yes. So the fact that people are disenchanted with Museveni is not automatically true that they will go to vote for Bobby Wine. So the opposition people, so the people hostile to Museveni may be 70% of the Ugandan electorate, but that does not translate into votes for the opposition. That's one. So because of that, because the opposition is virulent, angry, yelling and shouting on social media, abusing everybody, they switch off so many people. So people will not show up to vote. Now we come to NRM. NRM is another unmitigated disaster. First of all, as a party, the NRM is dead. In fact, if you separated the state of Uganda from the NRM, there will be no party called NRM. NRM is like an evil creeper that is leaning on an oak, the oak being the state. So the infrastructure of the state, you know, an evil creeper, you know these plants that grow on a wall or something else? That's the state, yeah? The perimeter wall, it can grow on another tree, it can grow on an electricity pole. There are plants that you...
Yes.
If you remove that prop, it falls down. That's the NRM. You remove the state, there is no NRM. Internally, they are divided. Also, NRM lost its moral purpose to say we want to develop the country. So they have retreated to what you call a cash and carry government. Everybody is in it for what in Zenfunirawa. Then the sense of the country is lost. Museveni has grown old. He's both physically and intellectually exhausted. At the same time, he wants to keep direct control of so many nitty-gritties, and everybody now wants to use him. It's another depressing situation. So, in those circumstances, if Museveni releases 100 billion for his election, he is lucky if 10 billion is spent on the election, because people will just go to the money and eat it. And everybody who's, the more public spirited persons are quitting elective politics. And as they withdraw, the more ruthless those who are willing to use hook and crook means, sell a house, deplete your assets, go bribe voters and win an election and then come and loot the state, are beginning, their share of representation within NRM is also increasing. So you have two sides. One is a very decadent group that has lost the moral purpose, and the other is a very angry, virulent group that is suffering from too much self-righteousness, so it cannot listen to others. And then you have a large group of Ugandans who are in the middle, you know, maybe they constitute 60% of the electorate, who will not show up to vote because they are apathetic or they are in disagreement with both sides. And this middle, for some strange reason, has not found, I would call this a dormant volcano, or I would call it social dynamite, but it has lacked a spark. It has lacked a leadership to catalyze it, to come to become the pivot of our politics. I think that the two extremes tend to attract people. The other ones are looters, these are grievance driven. So the two are fighting on the extremes, but the middle has withdrawn. And I think that's the tragedy of Uganda. So what we are likely to see in the next election is a very, very low voter turnout. Let me say it reaches 40%. Museveni will get 55% of the 40%, which is about 27% of the registered voters. And Bobi Wine maybe gets 40 or 38%, or whoever will be running there of that. So you have a very narrow minority running the country because the middle has withdrawn. So the only thing you can pray for is that a third force emerges, or a third candidate who is able to rally this 60% and offer them hope. Because what I see is Museveni's advantages in the election are tactical. His weaknesses are strategic. Let me show you. One, Museveni has grown very old. He cannot change that. That's a structural problem. He cannot go back to 40. So he's tired. Two, he has serious problems of governance. Look at the collapse of infrastructure across the country. The other day I was going to Fort Portal. My friend, we are back to 1985 when roads were totally broken. You go to schools and hospitals. You come to Kampala city. It's one continuous garbage dump. Everybody has built in a swamp. Kampala, a small rain, the city floods. Those are not problems. If you were to do drainage, you need 10 years to fix some of these problems. So Museveni cannot fix them in the next few months. That's a very serious weakness. Also the lack of, he can no longer reinvigorate NRM and give it a moral purpose, and then they become the champions of some progressive agenda for the country. So those are things that are so structural. His disarticulation from the youth, he cannot solve that problem. Unemployment, it needs a lot of time to create jobs. So he can't solve those problems. So he's way down. Then the demographics, younger people are not interested in the NRM as much as the NRM would wish. So, but his advantage is that the opposition is divided, it is angry, it is suffering from grievance politics or victimhood, but also it lacks, the opposition in Uganda are not scientific. I've never encountered a group of people who are incapable. Let me give you an example in the last election. I'm sorry to come always to the issues of rigging. Me, I'm a numbers person. There were 343, right, polling stations reporting about 100% voter turnout. 37% of them were in Nyabushozi, but then you would find them in Nakaseke, Isinjiro, Kazo. They were concentrated in the Kato corridor. So the opposition say, you see, there was 100% voter turnout, and Museveni got 100% of the vote. Museveni got 6.1 million votes. Am I correct? The total number of votes cast in 100% voter turnout, which is really proxy for rigging, was 138,000. Right? So you can remove from Museveni, it cannot change anything. You can cancel all those 100% voter turnouts. It's just 138. So you, okay. So you see, and you see, if you cannot count what matters, you are likely to make what you think matter. You are likely to count what you think matters. Those things don't matter. So the challenge they have is that if they were much more serious, and there's, you know, they call it the street light effect. A drunken man who has dropped his keys looks for them where the light is rather than where he actually dropped the keys. So that's what the opposition does. They go looking for things that I don't understand them when they look at them. Why can't these people sit and have a much more scientific approach to the challenges that they face and the country faces? And that is that actually voters are not showing up to vote. Why are people not interested in showing up to vote? The country is in a mess. We should be much more energized to vote for change. But people are withdrawing from voting. What is it that we are doing wrongly, or we are not doing at all, that is not attracting this large number of people from voting? Last election, the voter turnout was 59%. Presidential. Museveni got 60.4%. 57% of that. You see, So Museveni's total vote out of the total registered voters must have been about 37% of the total registered voters. That's a minority of the Ugandans. Why don't we ask ourselves, why are people opting out of voting? Are they satisfied with the status quo? Sarah Bireta was saying that there was violence. I should tell you, Sarah, always, I don't know how to the chain of causation, but in 2011, Museveni exercised no violence at all. In fact, he used a lot of bribery in that election. Voter turnout fell to 57%. Museveni got 68% of it. In 2016, Museveni unleashed violence across the country. Voter turnout shot from 57% to 68%. Museveni fell from 68% to 60.4%. It seems to me, I don't know whether I'm holding the chain of causation correctly, that whenever Museveni exercises violence, people get angry and actually show up to vote. And I have data from 2016 to show that late delivery of ballot papers actually was in Kampala, worked heavily against Museveni. Because we got the data from the Electoral Commission, we looked at polling stations where they delivered polling papers at 10 a.m., at 3 p.m., and at the next day. We found that Museveni actually performed better where ballot papers were delivered early, and performed badly where they were delivered late, either the next day or 3 p.m. or 11 a.m. And therefore, we had to get to understand what causes this kind of behavior. If you look at the demographics, you find that, one, people got angry and thought Museveni was trying to cheat the election. So the youth in Kampala mobilized, got angry, and stuck to the polling stations to vote. But you see, Museveni's voters are women and elderly. The elderly could not stand the sun all day. And the women had to go back home to cook, to tend to kids, and do home chores. So Museveni's support base actually left the polling stations. But the basic support base, male, youth, angry, even called each other, texted each other, and they came to vote. So it didn't favor Museveni at all. If it favored him not at a tactical level, but at a strategic level, in the sense that results from Kampala came late, so results from outlying areas came early, and therefore were able to create an early mood that Museveni is winning. That's the only advantage he had, which I consider quite strategic. But these challenges, if you cannot sit down as opposition and strategically think about these issues that you are facing, when you come into government, how are you going to strategize for the country? If you can't even strategize for yourself, how are you going to strategize for the country if you're incapable of looking at data, thinking, thrashing through these ideas? So you tell me about 2026, I think we are going to see a collapse in voter turnout. People will opt out of the election. Museveni will win 55% or 40%.